Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins-Sherwood, also known as Byron of Sidious. I am recording this video on my third break here at work, so this is not going to be long because I don't have the luxury of being long-winded this time. This is yet another video sort of responding to a piece put out by Carl Benjamin on his Akkad Daily video that he put out earlier today. It was video, "Can the British Right Break Through to the Mainstream?" And he was reading off from a Telegraph article. The article in question, written by James Warrington and Max Head. At least those were the two names in the byline. And he kept asking, throughout his video, Carl kept asking, why do they keep labeling these people who are referenced in the article alt-right? His question is, why do they, the Telegraph, or Warrington and Head, they keep using the term alt-right to refer to Dan Wooten and the other gentlemen in the article about GB News folks who have been kicked out or removed. The article itself on the Telegraph is entitled "GB News Outcasts Take Fight for the Right onto YouTube." I have a little bit of a hypothesis or a suspicion with regards to why it is they continuously use the term alt-right to label Wooten and the other folks who have found themselves in exile from GB News. You see, look, Carl Benjamin is a smarter fellow than myself, and I imagine that this idea at least brushed against his thoughts, but maybe just didn't take form solidly enough for him to include such a hypothesis in his video. But alt-right is a label without a solid basis anymore, without a solid accusation. It's a red herring. When Benjamin mentioned the alt-right, I think it was the third or fourth time in the article, he said, the first name that comes to mind for me was this fellow who had been a self-avowed white nationalist, Richard Spencer. That was the first name that came to mind associated with the label alt-right, at least for Carl Benjamin, who is much more in the moment and in the know and well-read about recent and current socio-political events and news and figures. And he's up to date. He's consistently read in on these things. Imagine your average person who does not have the time to waste on stuff like this. They've got no clue. As far as your average everyday person is concerned, the alt-right is for the most part not a big deal, or they're gone. They've already been taken care of and dealt with. You see, the term conjures the specter of a socio-political cadre that the political left has already vanquished and done away with. They have rendered them irrelevant to most people. Even I haven't thought of the term or people who were labeled as such in any recent musings. And I'm not thoroughly read in or constantly connected to the socio-political arena, but I'm well read in enough, and I listen to enough material in that arena to stay relatively up to date and cognizant of who's involved and who tends to have what leanings or associate and ally with whatever particular subject of the day happens to be. This allows for very easy guilt by association on the part of the Telegraph, specifically Warrington and Head, who wrote the article, or on the byline for the Telegraph. So everyone there, they can easily use guilt by association with regards to Dan Wooten and the other GB News exiles who have left and taken their stances and their commentary to places like YouTube and Rumble and what have you. You'll notice too that, or I imagine that it did not escape Sargon's notice that only YouTube was mentioned. And the last part of my quick hypothesis here is that dubbing these people, these pundits and these commentators, dubbing them alt-right is pure ad hominem that doesn't sound like ad hominem because of its political origins. It's very akin to the use of the word liberal as a pejorative in the George W. Bush years. During that 8-year term, the word liberal was used as an insult, as a way to demean people who were sociopolitically leaning to the left. It was an attempt to slap at and dismiss them with a hand wave, with the conjuration of a single term. It's I can't remember the brand of beer, but back in the 80s and 90s, there was a beer, a light beer, whose commercial tagline was "Tastes great, less filling." Well, guess what? Alt-right is these journos. Tastes great, less filling. They can slap this term on someone they sociopolitically disagree with and don't like or care for. They can slap it against them as an insult to demean and dismiss them, and they have the benefit of not having to actually defend the insult, and they can avoid what would be the logical conclusion of, hey, you're just using that as ad hominem. Or they can wave that away and say, no, alt-right is an actual socio-political perspective. We're not just insulting this guy. No, but that's exactly how you're using it. I'm sorry, but most of us who are, myself included, absolute dummies, are not necessarily going to catch you out every time you do this shite. But every now and again, even a moron catches a glint of something that looks a little dangerous and deserves to be looked at a little bit more in depth. And I thank Carl Benjamin once again for bringing that sort of thing to the attention of the public. But there's a further step, and this takes a little bit more paranoia to buy into. So if at this point you've already heard enough, you can check out. Anything further from here, obviously take with an even heavier grain of salt. But as to why they keep using the term alt-right and trying to dismiss these people and faff them off as, oh, they're dissident voices, their opinions don't really matter, they're on the fringe. Why would they put that in an article for the Telegraph? Why? Well, think about it. When you go to look up any of the characters in this GB News Exile Collective, if you go to look up their name, how are you going to look it up? You're probably going to Google it, right? Google is a search engine, not a verb, but we have turned it into a verb. Using Google for searching up news results or backgrounds on individuals nowadays results in the conclusion showing of the Google Gemini AI summary, which is a result of scraping thousands and thousands of websites, including blogs, including articles in journals like Telegraph, without deep attribution and without telling people the whole story. And we already know that Google has a historically left-leaning bias, and this AI is going to source its summary predominantly from left-leaning sources like the Telegraph. And I would bet dimes to dollars that folks like Warrington and Max Head already know that. They are not brilliant people. They are cunning. Low cunning. They understand full well that a lot of these AI search programs have already got a bias built in. And people don't bother to look deeper into things because they haven't got the time or inclination or the intellectual RAM to contend with greater nuance. So throwing this label of alt-right at these guys consistently. The Telegraph does it, and then the Guardian, let's say, picks up and does a story on the same thing, but they cite the Telegraph as their source for throwing that label on these guys. Well, guess what? Now you've got two sources, quote-unquote sources, claiming that these guys are alt-right. And now Google's Gemini AI has got at least two, quote-unquote, credible sources in the traditional media that have slapped this label on them. But because they are trusted sources and outlets, it lends an air of authority to that label. So it becomes even easier to dismiss them. Building upon building upon building. But that's maybe just me being paranoid. What do you think? Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers.